All right. I had a request from one of the subscribers to talk about card values. So I put a little, well, that of course made me do a spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet made me do a PowerPoint because I'm a nerd, so that's how these things work. But I'm going to go through a quick overview of Card Values 101. So there are four pillars to card values that are also true of many other items, not just cards. The first two I'm going to touch on first because they are the basis for all economy and all bartering and trade and everything that you buy or sell or even services follow the supply and demand principle. You could probably take a class that takes a whole year in economics and talk nothing about supply and demand, but this is going to be a very quick overview. I can't skip it because it's somewhat integral to card value. So first we'll talk about supply. As supply decreases, the value increases, and the inverse is true. As supply increases, the value decreases. So as you can see over on the right side there, I have a little neighborhood. So the best way to think about this is if you have a neighborhood and you have 10 houses that come up for sale every year, and you have 10 people who want to buy those houses, that is a state of equilibrium. There are exactly as much supply to meet the demand. If that supply decreases, let's say one year you only have 5 houses for sale, but the demand is constant, they still want 10 houses, the value increases. The supply decreases, the value increases. The same can be true if suddenly you have 20 houses for sale in your neighborhood, but you still only have 10 people that want to buy them. As the supply increases, the cost of those houses goes down, the value decreases. So we need to talk about the junk wax era, not something I'm familiar or not something I like to call the junk wax era because that was the era that I collected cards. But this is the estimated card production by the four major brands in 88 and 89. And this is in millions of cards produced. So in 1988, Topps made over 1.75 million cards. Donruss made over 1.5 million. Fleer made 1.5 million. Score was just coming on the scene, so they made a little under 1.25. The following year, that number went up like okay, so let's talk about demand. Demand works a little differently, but somewhat the same. As demand decreases, the value decreases. As demand increases, the value increases. So if we go back to our neighborhood, if only 5 people want those 10 houses, the value of those houses goes down. If 20 people want houses and there's only 10 available, the demand increases, the value also increases. So that's the first two pillars. We'll touch on supply again here in a second, but that's the first two pillars of value of anything, cards, anything else. The other two pillars are performance and quality. So I'm going to touch on those and in terms of how they relate to baseball cards. So prior to 1973, when I wasn't alive yet, but I was almost coming on the scene, performance dominated the value of a card. So if you had a Mickey Mantle who was considered, may be considered the best baseball player of all time, Nolan Ryan considered to be the best pitcher, um, these cards would be more valuable because these players are more popular. They perform better. The better you perform, the higher the value of your card. Everything was pretty much performance driven. Between 1974 and 1989, the value of cards, because again, the supply was increasing so much, that the value of the cards had to do a little bit more with supply in terms of a good performing player's card wasn't necessarily worth that much because there was all kinds of cards of that player. They were everywhere. But the rookie cards have an inherent scarcity. So the rookie cards for almost every decade, almost every year, is going to be the more valuable card than the other cards that follow it. And I tried to use a couple good examples here. Mike Schmidt cards are generally not worth very much, but his 1973 rookie third baseman card is. Dave Winfield's cards are not worth that much, but his 1974 rookie card is. Same can be said for Andre Dawson. I believe this is 70, no, I can't remember what this one, I want to say 74 or 78, but Andre Dawson's rookie card is worth something. Years later, in 1988, 87, 84, Andre Dawson card's not worth as much. Same thing with Ozzie Smith. His rookie card is worth a decent amount, but the cards that followed it aren't worth that much. By being a rookie card, you're only available that 1 year, essentially. And I can talk more about that if I wanted to go on and on, but card companies have kind of ruined the rookie situation by creating so many different sub-brands and releases. But that's how you value cards between 1973 or 74 and 1989 is if it's a rookie card, it tends to have value. If it's not a rookie card, it probably doesn't have value. Now realize that's up until 1989. The other thing that happened is quality. The year is 1989. For those of you who are old, you might recognize some of the pictures here. Something changed in 1989 that was probably the biggest impact on cards. This was released. This is Upper Deck 1989, the first year Upper Deck released baseball cards. I'm using a picture from Junk Wax Sales hobby break page, but it was the best picture I could get of a foil pack. These cards changed everything because for the first time, card quality was something that consumers cared about. Up until this point, Topps, Donruss, Fleer, Score, their cards weren't very high quality. I could show you some 89 Donruss cards that are just horribly miscut. Same thing with 88 Fleer and 89 Fleer and 87. Topps is notorious for having poorly cut cards, poorly centered cards. Up until then, nobody really cared. Once it got to this release, where Upper Deck released their 1989 cards in a foil pack, not a wax pack with a pack of gum in it, or a piece of gum in it, but in a foil pack, and the cards were actually nice to look at and of decent quality, people started to buy a lot more of them. These became sort of the hottest selling item, which was kind of a surprise to Topps, Donruss, Fleer, and Score, because at this point in collecting, a pack of Score cards cost right around a quarter. A pack of Topps cards cost about 35 cents. A package of Donruss cards cost about 35 to 45 cents. And a pack of Fleer was somewhere in the 50 cent to 75 cent range for a pack of cards. When Upper Deck released theirs, their cards were $1 or more a pack. Doesn't sound like much now, but back then that was a huge amount of money to pay for a pack of baseball cards. And people still bought them. So the other card companies said, well, geez, if they're willing to pay for higher quality cards and we can make $1 a pack, they started to make better quality cards to try to compete with Upper Deck. And eventually Topps just bought Upper Deck because that's what Topps does. So that's the 1989 thing that changed sort of everything. If I can get my slide, there we go. Okay. So in 2002, there was right around 2002, it's not exact, but there was another huge change. So prior to 2002, you didn't really have variance. When I say variance, I'm talking about parallels and all that kind of stuff. What you had were errors. So if you got a card where they made an error on it, one of the most famous ones is I believe it's the 87 Fleer, or no, maybe the 89 Fleer, where Billy Ripken had a expletive written on the bottom of his bat that said F you, essentially, or F off. They printed his picture of him holding that bat with that visible, and they didn't realize it until they'd already sent out some of the cards. Well, they then went back and corrected that by putting a black box over it. Well, the original one, the error, is worth much more money than a Billy Ripken 1989 Fleer, which is worth essentially nothing. This is also true of a lot of other collectibles. Coin collectors, errors are almost always what they try to gravitate towards because there's a scarcity. So if you look at the supply pillar, errors create scarcity. They create items that are essentially unintentional short prints. They didn't mean to do it, but they created a short print. After 2002, companies began creating intentional variants, parallel, short prints, inserts, numbered cards, autographs, relics. All of these things happened right around 2002 because what the card companies realized was if you create these very scarce things and you randomly insert them in your packs, people want to essentially play the lottery. And it works out good for kids because kids can't go into casinos, kids can't buy lottery tickets. But kids can go buy a pack of baseball cards and have a chance of pulling something that's really valuable. So it's kind of a way to introduce little kids into being gamblers, essentially. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think that it's in many ways wrecked the hobby, but at the same time, it has created a lot more demand and it has created a lot of value where in the past, when you're making 2 billion cards in a decade, you're not going to have much value. You're never going to have much value. The only time you're going to end up having value is if you have a rare talent that goes a long, lengthy career, retires, gets in the Hall of Fame, and dies. Then their card has some value. Well, that's making people wait a lifetime to get a valuable card. By creating these intentional variants, people now can get a valuable card in a pack or a box that they open. So summary, the vintage era, early collecting was primarily performance driven. The better the player, the higher the value. That still to some degree holds true. A top Series 1 of Aaron Judge is going to be worth more than a top Series 1 of Flufio Flufferman. It's just, that's the way it is. The more popular the card, the more valuable it's going to be. But nowadays, it's nowhere near the main performance driver that it used to be. Given the high volumes of cards, the only scarcity to reduce supply was rookie designations. So a rookie was 1 year of that player. So that's how it becomes scarce because it's only that 1 year. The year after that, not their rookie card. 2 years after that, not their rookie card. So that was how you created scarcity in the vintage era, was with rookie cards. In the junk wax era, the value of the cards reduced severely to a level where even top performers didn't have much value. If you go through the sports card databases and look at values of cards, you're going to come across, 1989 cards of Hall of Famers, and they're not going to be worth more than 80 cents, $1.20, something like that. And those values are sort of on the high end of what you could actually get. So the junk wax era, the supply was just too high. So there was no scarcity. The only scarcity was, again, rookie designations or if there was a printing error. In the modern era, card volumes continue to be high, so that supply is high. The card quality has improved, which has increased demand. Rookie and prospect cards still have inherent scarcity, but this is offset by card companies creating multiple product lines. So the problem I have with all the product lines that these companies have now is the rookie and prospect cards, which should have a good deal of value. Now the rookie and prospect card is spread out over, in some cases, 15 to 25 different product lines, which decreases the value of rookies and prospects compared to previous eras. And errors are less common, but companies add intentional variations to create a lower supply. So they've gotten rid of a lot of the error problems that they had early on, but now they insert their own intentional variations. If you've ever seen the Topps Holiday set, there's all these intentional little things little Easter egg things they sneak in there that create short prints or super short prints.